Hi, and welcome to the October edition of Reset and Restore. So, for today's practice, you might want to have available a blanket to cushion your knees and just act as a little bit of extra padding there. I know my knees tend to be tender, so I like to have that available. I'm also going to invite you to grab a big pillow or bolster or couch cushion or something else that might be helpful. And you're always welcome to use props such as blocks or big books, anything that can help raise the floor up and make it a little bit more accessible for you. So let's begin on our backs today. So lying down on the back, finding a nice comfortable seated position. Perhaps stretching the legs out long. If it's more comfortable for you, if you have a tender back, you can always roll up your blanket or grab your bolster and use that to support the knees to give you a little bit of a break on that low back there. Let's begin by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. Once more, breathing deeply in through the nose and letting it go through the mouth. And one last time, breathing deeply in through the nose. And as you let that go through the mouth, noticing whether it's possible to release anything, relax a little bit more into the mat, beginning to come into this moment, this breath, this body. Letting yourself unhook from your week, from the stresses of work and life. Softening through the brow, letting the eyes be heavy in their sockets, relaxing the jaw, allowing the shoulders and upper back to relax, softening through the heart center and the belly and the low back, relaxing the arms, the upper arms, elbows, lower arms, wrists, hands, and fingers. And softening through the glutes, hips and pelvis, upper legs, knees, calves and shins, ankles, feet, heels and toes. Allowing the body to become heavier and heavier on the mat with each exhale. Coming into this body, noticing whether there is any part of the body that is asking for your attention, your loving kindness, and noticing whether bringing your attention and your breath to that area allows you to soften just a little bit there. And taking a moment to set your intention for today's practice. Perhaps the intention to release what is not serving you, creating room, creating space for what is yet to come. So often we allow situations, individuals, experiences to live rent-free in our heads, sometimes even in our bodies. And this does not always serve us. Knowing that releasing these attachments, unhooking from these parts that we are not being served by. Allows us to reclaim a little bit of our power, a little bit of our vital life force energy. And let's begin with a little breathing practice. So we'll return to our deep breathing, this time breathing in and out through the nose. So breathing deeply in, filling the lungs, filling the belly, and breathing out through the nose, allowing that to go. And on your next inhale, as you breathe deeply in, perhaps you can imagine or visualize that you are breathing light into every cell of your being. And as you're exhaling, you're releasing old stagnant energy, anything that's ready to be released, recycled, composted. Breathing deeply in, filling the cells with vital life force energy, refreshing, and exhaling, releasing that which is no longer serving us. Breathing in light, freshness. Breathing out, stagnation. Taking a few more breaths in this way on your own time. And knowing that this practice is designed to be very gentle, supportive for your nervous system. If at any point you feel overwhelmed or you're feeling sensations of pain or extreme discomfort, please back away from the posture, maybe even returning to a safe pose like this one. And once more together, breathing deeply in and letting it go. Beginning to awaken through the fingers and the toes. Blinking the eyes open, reaching the arms long above you, reaching the toes long on the mat, hugging the knees into the chest, rocking side to side, beginning to find a little movement in the body, in the low back, in the hips. And stretching the left leg long on the mat, drawing that right knee in towards the chest, the shoulder. Perhaps giving yourself a little movement here, some very small, gentle circles with the hip, reversing direction at some point to ensure that you're getting both sides. And drawing that left knee back into the chest. Then extending the right leg long on the mat, drawing that left knee into the chest, in toward the shoulder. Perhaps finding a few gentle circles here with the hip. And reversing direction. Bringing the right knee back into the chest once more, and then dropping both feet to the mat. Feet should be hip width apart here, and you want to scoot those heels in fairly close to the glutes, so perhaps even to the point of being able to brush the back of the heels with your fingertips. If that doesn't work for your body, absolutely no worries. Please find a shape that does. And we're just going to take a few very gentle bridges, rolling up and down slowly to begin awakening through the spine. So on the inhale, let's press our arms, our hands into the floor and begin rolling the hips up to the sky, one vertebra at a time. And exhaling, rolling down one vertebra at a time. Inhaling, pressing through the feet, activating the glutes and hamstrings. Hips rise toward the sky. And exhaling, rolling down one vertebra at a time. And one last time, Rolling those hips up to the sky and releasing back down to the mat. Taking a deep breath in here and letting it go. And now let's walk our feet out about as wide as the mat and gently drop the knees to the right side. You might want to move those arms out a little bit to give yourself some space. And then inhaling through center, allowing the knees to fall to the left side here. Inhaling through center and windshield wiping with the knees, with the legs, a few times in each direction as we continue warming up through the hips, through the spine, moving energy through the body, bringing fresh breath, fresh oxygen, fresh life force energy into the body. And the next time that your knees drop to the right, allow them to stay here. If you'd like, you might even bring the right heel or ankle on top of that left knee to find a little bit of a deeper opening in this left hip here. Just taking a gentle twist for a moment, breathing deeply in and letting it go. Releasing that foot if it was on top of the knee. Inhaling, knees up and over to the left, and finding that gentle twist on this side. If it serves, perhaps bringing foot, ankle on top of that right knee to find a little bit of additional opening. Breathing deeply in and letting it go. And inhaling back to center. Let's draw knees into the chest once more. Give yourself a little hug. Maybe rock back and forth a little bit. Find a bit of release in the low back. And then let's drop our feet to the mat once more and bring the left ankle to rest on the right thigh or just above the right knee. You might bring the left hand to the left knee and find a little bit of extra opening by pressing out through the knee here. If you're feeling very open in the hips, you might also consider drawing this entire shape in toward your chest, grasping behind the hamstring or around the shin. Breathing deeply into the hip here. Creating space, releasing what is no longer serving, recycling the old energy, making room for what is yet to come. And dropping that right foot back to the mat if you held the shape toward your chest. And let's switch that out and find the same shape on the second side. So, right ankle comes to rest on top of the left thigh or above the left knee, perhaps pressing the right knee out a bit with that right hand. If this is serving you, please stay here. If you are feeling quite open in the hips and want to go a little bit deeper this early in your practice, you're most welcome to draw this entire shape in toward the chest, grasping behind the left hamstring or around that shin below the knee. Please avoid putting pressure on the knee joint here. Breathing deeply into the hips. Settling into the body. Connecting with the breath. And allowing the shape to release, dropping foot to the mat if it was drawn in toward the chest, and walking both knees out to the outer edge of the mat. Let's allow the knees to fall in toward one another. Sorry, walk the feet out toward the edges of the mat and allowing the knees to drop in, finding constructive rest for a moment, simply noticing how the body feels, checking in with yourself, with the state of the body, noticing whether there's an area of the body asking for your kind, loving attention, and if something is coming into your awareness, if there's a sensation or an area of the body asking for your love, directing your breath and your loving kindness into this area of the body. And now, let's roll to whatever side feels good for you before pressing up to a seated position and finding your way onto all fours for our tabletop series. So for this portion of the practice, I am going to get out my handy dandy blanket to provide some extra soft cushioning for my knees. I invite you to do the same. Or if you don't have something like this available, a towel works. If you don't have that, you can always fold your mat over and find a little bit of extra cushion that way. So hands come under the shoulders, knees come under the hips, pressing firmly into both hands, broadening across the shoulder blades, firming the core, engaging the legs, and drawing the spine long from the tip of the tail to the crown of the head. Finding strength and stillness here. And on your next inhale, beginning to look up toward the sky, tipping the tailbone up, and exhaling, tucking the tail, tucking the chin, inhaling, opening the chest, looking up, and exhaling through cat. Inhaling to cow, and exhaling to cat. Coming back to a neutral spine now, let's turn to look over one shoulder at the same hip, breathing into the opposite side body as we open through the side body a little bit here. And exhaling, doing the same on the opposite side. Switching sides once again. And once more to the other side. And coming back to center. Let's now step the right toes back and then cross those toes behind the left heel. Turning to look over the left shoulder, seeing if you can peek at those right toes over the shoulder. Really breathing into that right side body, finding opening here in the side body, the hips. And coming through center, let's take that on the opposite side, stepping left toes back, crossing the toes behind the right foot, the right ankle, turning to look over the right shoulder, taking a peek at those left toes, breathing into the side body. And releasing this, coming back through center. And now, tucking the toes, if you have not already done so, let's begin to sit the hips back toward the heels for a variation of toes pose. Now, you might find this to be a very intense sensation, so please only go back as far as feels good for you. Staying here might be enough, especially if you, like me, experience plantar fasciitis. So, if it feels good though, please begin to bring hips toward the heels and release that. And just find a little bit of a flow here. Gently coming into this variation of toes pose and coming out. Gently opening through the bottoms of the feet, those fascia that support so much of our lives. And they really don't get a lot of love. And now finally, beginning to really sit those hips back toward the heels. And if you're feeling quite open in the feet, you might even consider walking the hands up to sit. Just for a couple of breaths here. And releasing this. Let's flip those feet over. Maybe tap those feet on the floor. Wiggle it out. Let that go. I know for me that can be a very intense asana. But it really makes a difference in the way that my feet, my calves, and by virtue of the kinetic chain, the rest of my body feels. So I hope that that is supportive for you as well. So now, let's inhale and sweep the right arm up to the sky, and exhale, threading that right hand behind the left wrist and walking the left fingers forward if it feels good for you. Bringing the right ear, the right shoulder to the mat, looking underneath the left arm, the left armpit at those right fingers. Finding opening through the shoulder here, breathing deeply in and out. Breathing that fresh oxygen into the body. Clearing out the old, making space for the new. And bringing that left hand beneath the left shoulder, sweeping right arm up and open to the sky, and planting that right hand back beneath the right shoulder. Let's take that shape on the second side now. Inhaling left arm up to the sky and threading the left hand, left arm behind the right wrist, bringing the left shoulder, left ear to the mat, perhaps walking those right fingers forward, finding additional extension in the side body, the lats, looking under that right arm, right armpit toward the left fingers, and breathing deeply into the shoulder. Finding spaciousness in the posture, in the breath. And bringing the right hand underneath the right shoulder, sweeping left arm up and open to the sky, and replacing both hands on the mat beneath the shoulders. Taking a breath here, resetting, noticing how your body feels, pressing firmly through both hands, broadening through the shoulder blades. And let's step the right foot between those hands, finding a low lunge shape here. Keeping that right knee over the right ankle. It can come a little bit in front of the right ankle, but we definitely want to keep it behind those toes just to protect the knee joint. Taking a moment, breathing into the hips here. And on the next exhale, sending the hips back to a bit of a half split, opening up through the back leg. And on the next exhale, coming back to that low lunge. And inhaling, coming back to the half split. Finding your way through this movement pattern a few times. If you like, you can point your toes to the ceiling as you sit the hips back. Just getting a little bit of movement here through the hips, the hamstrings, and finally ending in this low lunge. And let's step that right foot back, and step the left foot forward. That's where I was going with that. Setting up for our low lunge. Making sure that you're not on the knee joint, that you're just above it. Lining up that knee over the ankle, or at least behind the toes, and breathing into the hips here. And sending those hips back on the next exhale, finding your variation, your depth of this half split. Breathing into the back of this leg, letting it open through the hamstring. And exhaling back to the low lunge. And let's begin moving through this pattern of movement just a little bit. So again, if you would like to point the toes toward the ceiling on that half split, you are more than welcome to do so. Only coming as deep into these postures as feels good for you. This might be a good place to have some blocks underneath the hands. Probably could have offered that in the first side. Sorry about that, y'all. And one last time before coming back to our low lunge and stepping the knee back, finding our way into tabletop. Just taking a breath here and letting it go. Okay, so we're going to step the right foot forward for a low lunge once more. You're most welcome to have a block here under the inside hand if you would like. Just taking a moment to really breathe into the hip, perhaps coming a little bit deeper into the hip this time, now that we've lubricated our knee and hip joints a little bit. And let's plant that left hand on the mat and inhale, sweeping right arm up and open. You can stay here, or if you are open in the hips and you would like to do so, you might sweep that arm up and back, bend through the knee, and reach for the ankle, the heel, the foot, allowing the right knee to fall open and finding some additional opening here in this twisted dragon pose. And coming back through center. Let's swap those legs out. Take that series on the second side now. Finding our low lunge on the opposite side. Taking a moment to settle into this low lunge. And then planting right hand on the mat, sweeping left arm up to the sky, up and open. Breathing here. And if you would like to, you are welcome to sweep that arm up and back, letting the left knee fall open, grasping the right toes, perhaps the right heel, perhaps the right ankle. Turning to look over that shoulder. You might even make it extra dragony by taking a deep breath in, and on the exhale, sticking out the tongue and exhaling forcefully. And releasing that posture. Let's step the right and left feet back now. I'm going to go ahead and remove my blanket. And I'm going to find my way into a modified plank pose with my knees on the floor. You are most welcome to press up to a high plank if you would like to. But since we're going for gentle and loving, I'm going to stay here on my knees in this posture. Feeling the strength through the arms, broadening across the shoulder blades. And slowly, gently lowering to the belly. Pressing all 10 toes into the floor. Bringing the hands just beneath the shoulders. And on the next inhale, squeezing the feet, the knees, the thighs together, and lifting your feet off the floor. Just an inch or two. And letting that go. And now, once more, as we inhale, activating through the inner thighs, the inner legs, squeezing the feet together. Inhaling, lifting those feet off the floor. And on the exhale, pressing up into cobra until the feet touch the floor. And letting that go. Once more, inhaling, feet off the floor. And exhaling, pressing up into cobra until feet touch the floor. Feeling the strength through the upper back, the mid back, and letting that go. Let's now press up through table, open the knees quite wide, and sit our hips back into child's pose, taking a couple breaths here. And now let's do a little bit of a flow between child's and cobra. So on the inhale, we're going to arch up and forward before coming into cobra. And then on the exhale, we'll round back to child's pose. Inhaling, arching up and forward into this cobra shape. And exhaling, arching back into child's pose. Once more, arching forward into our cobra shape. And exhaling, arching, sitting hips back to child's pose. And let's round forward toward cobra, but this time we're going to return to our bellies. So now bringing hands outside of the mat, as though we were going into a super cobra. Let's bend the left knee, bringing that heel toward our bottom, and then using the left hand, pressing into the left hand and turning the torso, turning the hips so that that left foot comes to the floor behind us. And coming back through center, extending the left leg, bending the right knee, bringing right heel toward the right glute, and then pressing into the right hand, turning the hips bringing that right foot to the floor behind us. And coming back through center. Pressing up and back to child's pose, really widening the knees this time. Walking the hands forward, finding a very long, extended child's pose, allowing the forehead to press into the mat, finding some opening through the side body under the armpits. And now you're welcome to stay here, or if you would like, plant the hands on the mat, coming through table, flipping the toes underneath, and then lifting hips to the sky for a downward facing dog, pressing all four corners of the hands into the mat, allowing the heels to melt toward the mat. Feet should be about hip width distance here, unless you're feeling very, very open, in which case toes can come to touch. Broadening across the shoulder blades, firming the core. And beginning to walk up toward the front of the mat to find yourself in a forward fold. Maybe taking opposite elbows in your hands and doing a little ragdoll stretch here. And then allowing yourself to hang into this forward fold before rolling up to standing, one vertebra at a time. Let's inhale, arms up to the sky. And grasping the right wrist with the left hand, let's find a half moon coming up and over, opening through that right side body. Breathing here for a moment. And inhaling back through center, grasping now the left wrist with the right hand and bringing that up and over. And coming back through center. Gently sitting hips back for share pose. You could have your hands at the heart. You might have the hands at the hips. You're welcome to bring hands up and forward, whatever feels good to you. Breathing here for just a moment. Perhaps lifting toes off the mat just to ensure that your weight is in the heels. And on the next exhale, let's sweep that right arm back and turn to look over the right shoulder for an open twist. And coming back to center and exhaling to the opposite side. Finding an open twist here. And inhaling through center. Bringing hands to the heart if they're not already there. And hinging at the hips, straightening the legs, finding a forward fold. Inhaling, lifting halfway, finding length through the spine. Exhaling, folding forward. And then turning to the long side of your mat, stepping left foot back quite wide. Let's roll up to standing. Extend those arms for 5-pointed star. Taking up space. Legs are active. And beginning to sit into the legs now. Bringing hands to heart center. Finding goddess pose or horse stance, however you like to think of this. Bringing hands to the lower thighs, pressing into the hands. Let's now bring our right shoulder toward our left knee and find a little twist here. And coming through center, finding that twist on the opposite side, bringing left shoulder toward the right knee this time. And coming back through center, standing up, bringing hands to the hips, bringing the toes a little bit more facing forward or perhaps even facing in toward one another, and then beginning to hinge forward at the hips for a wide-legged forward fold. Coming down as far as feels good for your body. Breathing here, opening through the backs of the legs, through the low back, mid back, upper back, allowing the head to hang heavy. Maybe shaking the head no, nodding the head yes, letting something unstick here. And let's walk over to the right foot. Find a little bit of a side body stretch here. And coming through center, walking over to the left foot. Finding that opening on the second side. And coming back through center, rolling up one vertebra at a time, returning to star, taking up the space, becoming expansive, bringing hands to the heart or hands to the hips. Let's begin to sit into the left hip and let the right toes come off the floor. Breathing here for a moment. And let's take that over to the second side, sitting into the right hip, letting the left toes come off the floor. And let's flow through that shape from side to side a few times. This variation of Skandasana. And after this last version, we will keep our feet where they are, but turn those front toes toward the front of the mat. Pivot to find the ball of your back foot and sink into crescent pose here, inhaling, arms up and over. And let's take now left wrist and right hand, reaching up and over, finding a little extra length here in the side body. And inhaling back to center before cactusing the arms, opening the heart toward the sky. Inhaling, arms back up to center, stepping to the front of the mat. Taking a moment here in mountain pose, feeling the difference from one side to the other. Connecting with the breath. And we'll take that on the second side now. So inhaling, arms up to the sky. Exhaling, folding forward. Inhaling to a halfway lift, finding length in the spine. And exhaling, folding forward. Stepping now the right foot back and opening up wide to the left side of the mat. Toes can be pointed out. Rolling up to star, taking up that space. And bringing hands to the heart or hands to the hips, dropping the hips into goddess or horse pose. We're hoping those knees are tracking over the second to third toes. Bringing hands to the thighs. Let's bring left shoulder toward right thigh, come through center, right shoulder toward left thigh, moving through this a little bit here, opening through the spine, and then coming back to center, straightening the legs, bringing the toes to point more toward one another, bringing hands to the hips, and hinging forward at the hips, finding your wide-legged forward fold. You can always have blocks under the hands here if that would be supportive for you. This time, let's bring our left hand to the right ankle and sweep the right arm up and open for a twist here. You might bring the right hand to the sacrum just to make sure that you're even here. And coming back through center, bringing right hand to the left wrist now, sweeping left arm up and open, maybe checking on that sacrum. And coming back through center, rolling up to star once more. And again, sitting into the left hip, pointing right toes toward the sky. And coming to the other side, sinking into the right hip, left toes go toward the sky. And coming back to standing, pivoting into our crescent on the second side, inhaling arms up to the sky, grasping right wrist with left hand, drawing arm up and over, finding some opening here. Inhaling back to center, exhaling, finding a heart opener, cactusing the arms. Inhaling back through center. Exhaling, bringing hands to the mat, stepping right foot up to meet the left foot in a forward fold. Perhaps once more grasping the elbows in ragdoll, allowing the spine to find length through this natural traction, head releases. And now let's find our way to child's pose. So, coming down to the knees, bringing the knees as wide as the mat, sitting the hips back toward the heels, walking those fingers forward for an extended child's pose, really breathing into the hips here. Walking hands up, coming to your seat, bringing the bottoms of the feet to touch in front of you for seated bound angle pose. You can have your heels as far away from you as feels comfortable, or bring them in as far as feels good, depending on the opening in your body. Hands can be around the ankles, around the feet, drawing the spine up long. Allowing the knees to fall open. And now, extending the right leg long on the mat, bringing this left foot in toward the inner thigh. This is where I'm going to use my bolster. I'm going to bring the bolster on top of my extended leg. I'm going to use my hands to turn my body, my chest, to really face this foot before walking my hands out toward my foot here, releasing my head, releasing my spine in this side bend. Now, if you don't need this, that's completely fine. You're most welcome to find a version that does work for you. The important thing is that we are finding length in the spine rather than crunching the low back. And walking back up. Let's take that on the second side. Extending the left leg long, tucking that right leg, right foot into the left thigh. Bringing our torso to face that foot. Getting our bolster involved if it feels good for us. Walking forward into that forward fold. And releasing that, walking back up, and let's take one last seated posture together. So, bringing the right shin about parallel with the front of the mat, left shin about parallel with the side of the mat in this 90-90 shape. And I'm going to bring my bolster on top of my right knee and begin to walk myself forward into deer pose. Folding over the front hip. Breathing deeply here. Breathing deeply in and out. Beginning to walk up. Releasing this posture. And let's take it on the second side. So finding those 90-90 legs on the second side. Drawing the spine up long and folding forward over the front leg. Breathing deeply into that front hip. And walking up to a seated position. I'm going to move my props out of the way as we find our way onto our backs for our final series. So rolling down one vertebra at a time, drawing the knees in toward the chest, perhaps rocking from side to side. Dropping both knees to the mat, both feet to the mat rather, and crossing the left knee over the right knee. Let's drop both knees to the left side. You might extend the right arm out and open, look over that shoulder as you find this nice opening. A last little twist here. If the twist is too much for you, if the leg crossing is too much, simply let both knees fall to one side. And coming back through center. Let's take that on the second side now. So crossing right knee over left, or just letting both knees drop to the right side. Finding that twist here. And coming back through center, drawing knees into the chest once more. Bringing knees now as wide as your shoulders. You might stay here, or if it feels good for you, you might reach between your legs, reaching for the ankles or the outsides of your feet. Finding happy baby pose, maybe rocking from side to side. Breathing into the hips here. Clearing out the old and making space for the new. And letting that go. Reaching the legs long on the mat. Allowing your arms to reach long beside you on the mat. Allowing the eyes to close. Allowing the hips to soften, the heart to soften, the shoulders to soften. Taking a moment in this final resting posture where we allow the work of our practice to integrate. Perhaps imagining that with each out-breath, you could melt into the floor just a little, allowing the yoga to melt into you. Perhaps returning to our breath practice from the beginning of class, breathing in light into every cell of the body. And as we breathe out, allowing anything that's left, that's ready to go, to be released. Breathing in gratitude for our bodies. Thank you, body. Breathing out any frustration or negative thoughts we have about this sweet body that carries us through so much in life. Taking just a moment here to rest, just to be. Allowing the body to breathe itself. Giving yourself the gift of this moment of rest. And now taking a deep breath in and letting it go. Beginning to wiggle through the fingers, wiggle through the toes, maybe awaken through the wrists and the ankles. Perhaps take a nice long stretch on your mat before rolling to your favorite side. Pausing here, savoring the liminal space, the transition, practicing the pause before pressing up to seated. And And for just a moment, finding yourself in a comfortable seated position. Bringing hands to the heart, offering yourself a prayer of gratitude for carving out this time for yourself, for your well-being. I know it's not easy, but it is necessary. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again next month. Have a wonderful weekend. Namaste.